So a couple of years ago, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, or when it was about to be overturned, and somebody within the Supreme Court office had leaked a document showing a draft of a document from Samuel Alito making his argument for why Roe versus Wade had to be overturned. When that news broke, there was a group of pro-life organizations that came together and made a statement regarding what they thought about the process of and about its overturning and what they plan to do and what they plans to defend once it eventually came known that Roe v. Wade indeed was going to be overturned. So I want to go over their letter that kind of talks about exactly what they want to defend and relate that to something relate that to something that Megan Basham, who works for the Daily Wire, she made I think a 100% correct point when it comes to abortion and what pro-life activists and what everybody who is pro-life needs to seriously think about and to imbibe when it comes to this argument for the lives of women and the lives of children, especially who are being taken in this dastardly act of abortion. So I want to go over the letter that these pro-life organizations wrote, and then play a clip of Megan Basham saying what I think needs to be said more and more loudly on the pro-life side of the argument regarding abortion, particularly with women. But we'll start with the letter from the pro-life organization. So let me pull it up here so you can see it. So this was May 12, 2022. So this is just before Roe v. Wade was overturned. It says, an open letter to state lawmakers from America's leading pro-life organizations to all state legislators in the United States of America with the leak of a draft U.S. Supreme Court opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito in Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization that appears to show a majority of the court may be in favor of reversing Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. There has been increasing news coverage of state-level momentum to enact laws that protect mothers and their unborn children from the tragedy of abortion. We all know that abortion is a tragic thing. It's a horrible thing. It's an horrific thing when it comes to how children are just completely mutilated in the womb, or their lives just snuffed out regardless of level of development. So it doesn't matter. The point of the matter is they're being killed on a daily basis in America and around the world. So it's a historic tragedy. Over the past 50 years, under the shadow of Roe v. Wade and Doe versus Bolton, abortion has taken the lives of more than 63 million unborn American children. But the tragedy of abortion isn't limited to the unborn child who loses her life. The mother who aborts her child is also Roe's victim. And I think this is where it starts to get a little off the rails here. She is a victim of a callous industry created to take lives, an industry that claims to provide for women's health, but denies the reality that far too many American women suffer devastating physical and psychological damage following abortion. Now, that may be true. Yeah, I would imagine that when you take the life of a child that is growing within you, that is depending upon you to care and love and shelter it within your womb for a period of 9 months, and then to grow that child and protect that child, feed that child as it comes out of your womb, and you teach it the values and the deeds that need to be done in life to lead a successful life. I would imagine that has a physical and a mental toll on you, on your life, especially if your conscience is still activated and still working. So I think that's obviously undeniable when you have that level of distortion going on, or destruction going on in the life of a mother. So it continues. It says the abortion industry tries to dismiss reports and studies of post-abortive trauma. But even as far back as the 1980s, scientific researchers and the mainstream media were documenting the reality of abortion's consequences. Studies examining the records of over 50,000 California Medicaid patients from 1989 to 1994 found women who underwent abortions experienced 2.6 times more psychiatric admissions in the first 90 days following pregnancy than women who gave birth, and 17% higher mental health claims over the following 4 years. And again, that goes to the fact that when you are committing an egregious sin like abortion is, there's going to be spiritual, psychological effects. Even like David, when he talked about how when he kept his sin hidden within him, his bones dried up, he couldn't sleep, he was weeping. It was hard for him to live and to function in the world because he had unconfessed sin and he had guilt that he hadn't dealt with appropriately yet. And there's millions of women just within the United States alone that are dealing with this guilt night after night, day after day, year after year. And they may hide it. They've probably learned how to suppress the conscience, to suppress the guilt feelings with drugs, with alcohol, with other things going on. But at the end of the day, this thought, I'm sure, when they walk around town, when they see babies, the thought has to jolt them every time they see a child, laughing with its mother, or a mother, feeding her child, or whatever the case may be. I imagine that has got to weigh on their conscience at a level that few people understand. Because again, taking a life of a child is, again, one of the most heinous and egregious acts that we could do as a culture. So it continues and says that a 1989 Los Angeles Times survey found 56% of women who had abortions felt guilty about them, and 26% mostly regretted the abortion. So even though there's some regret out there, it looks like, according to at least to this one survey, there's not that much regret going on regarding what women are doing. And regardless of whether or not they feel regret, it still makes the act wrong. But in this letter, they're trying to defend the woman, and we'll continue to go through that and talk about that. So even like it says here, women, let me give you a bigger screen here. It says, women are victims of abortion and require our compassion and support, as well as ready access to counseling and social services in the days, weeks, months, and years following an abortion. As national and state pro-life organizations representing tens of millions of pro-life women, or pro-life men, women, and children across the country, let us be clear. We state unequivocally that we do not support any measure seeking to criminalize or punish women, and we stand firmly opposed to include such penalties in legislation. So this took me aback a little bit when I heard, I think, Jeff Durbin talking about it, and he has a massive ministry that he does called End Abortion Now. They go to abortion clinics and try to convince women and their spouses, or their brothers or husbands or boyfriends, to not go in the clinic and kill the child that they are intending to do. So he's one of those people that are on the ground. They have a vested interest in this. He's even sponsored or partnered with legislators to get legislation sponsored and written into law for equal protection of the unborn, which would include criminalizing women for doing this act. And this is something that I think should be clear, and I think maybe getting clearer, especially with somebody like Megan Basham talking about it on a Daily Wire production when they were talking about they were having their election night special, and this issue of abortion came up. And so that's why I wanted to play that for you to hear what she had to say, because I think what she has to say is exactly right when it comes to this issue. First, this is Matt Walsh talking about making his points on the abortion issue.
So that's why I also have grace, because a lot of those people tend to be more of the absolutists, and they have trouble with the incremental approach.
Yeah.
And I believe in the incremental approach, but for them, like, this is their life, and they've given their life to it. And that's why they have trouble sometimes doing what they see as compromise when they're in this every day. But so I understand that emotionally, but
you're also.
And he's talking about how there's been division between those who want an absolutely outright ban to abortion, those who want to take the incremental approach, take the victory, or you can take it as long as you are advancing the issue of bringing abortion to a cease and desist, for, full stop from conception to birth. We protect children. And he's making an argument talking about like people like Jeff Durbin and others, many others who go to the abortion clinics week by week, month by month, who are out there on the ground in the trenches trying to convince women, weekly, monthly, daily, to not go in and murder their children. And so he's saying that, it's easier for them, those people who are actually at the forefront of this, to be more absolutist versus those who may not be on the forefront and wanted to take the more incremental approach. Because when you're actually in it, you see the women, you see the men, you see them go in, pregnant, and then leave not pregnant, knowing what has taken place within those interim minutes of them being in the building. It's hard for you to want to do things incrementally when you know this must be stopped immediately. And I think everybody on a gut level agrees with that. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. But we'll continue with the discussion here.
We're going to suffer setbacks, like overturning Roe was always going to lead to an increase in abortion. Roe was in some ways a bulwark. I'm sorry, Roe was in some ways actually a limiting factor for abortion in many parts of the country. And now that it's gone, what we're seeing is that yes, some states like Florida are able to have great abortion law, And some states like Minnesota are going to be like, bring us your 5-year-old and we'll deal with this problem for you. Because Roe had limits on trimesters. And of course, they found what.
Which in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz, who was vice presidential candidate, who was the vice presidential candidate for Kamala Harris, he did sign into law like a full protection on abortion, pretty much from 0 to 9 months. There was no limiting factors there. There was no, trimesters talked about. It was more so, however old the baby is in your womb, we will gladly allow you to come kill it in our state of Minnesota.
Ways around all that, but it was a national, broadly
So
applied.
maybe, therefore, law may not be the best vehicle. This is my position. My position is that there are two better vehicles than laws, because there will always be states that allow it, and that will obviate the power of the law.
Just because states allow it doesn't mean we shouldn't make laws for it. And you can kind of understand where he's coming from. Law doesn't stop it, but it's the same thing with when it comes to rape. Like, if rape is going to happen, why make a law against it? Well, we need a law against it because that shows the standard of righteousness that we want in this society, and we need a standard of law that shows that we don't want that happening. It's the same thing with abortion. We don't want that happening. Therefore, we need a law, a statute, provision that provides a clear delineation between this is right and this is wrong regarding abortion or any other moral issue. So he says we don't need a law, but then as Dennis Prager continues to talk, he says we kind of need a law regarding what you'll hear what he has to say. And then Megan Basham responds to him with, I think, what is extremely insightful and helpful and perfectly right on this issue.
One is persuasion. I will just say my PragerU video on abortion, which begins with, I am not addressing the issue of legality, only the issue of morality, is gone viral. It's like 10 million views, at least. And without once saying a word about legal or not legal. But when you make which I think is an unanswerable case for how could you argue that if a mugger shoots a woman who is pregnant and kills the baby, he goes to prison for murder. But if she wants the child killed, then it's a non-issue. It's not tenable morally. The other is how.
Yeah, I think obviously, like you said, that makes no sense. How do you have laws against killing a child, or even like the double murder? If a guy kills a pregnant woman, you get charged with double homicide. But then if the woman doesn't want the baby, then it's no problem. Hey, just make sure you go home and get some rest. It makes no sense.
How about this? If you're going to pass a law, and this law I would be for, informed consent.
So he says you don't need a law, but then he says pass a law to do this at least. So, kind of contradictory there, in my opinion.
That's all. If you go for an abortion, we want you to know what is involved. Here is a film on what the fetus is, what is happening right now. Then make up your mind and make that film unemotional, as objective, as scientific as possible, informed consent. It'd be very hard for liberals to argue. Leftists will always argue against it. But I think liberals will say, well, we'll make that trade. You don't ban it, and we'll give you informed consent laws. How's that per possibility?
I don't know.
Now, listen here to what Megan Basham says. Again, I've been saying it a lot over the program, but this is where I think she gets it exactly right.
Know that it would do what we think that would do, only because if you look at what just happened in Washington, D.C., and you see these women marching through the streets now, banging on their drums in this very sort of sacrament way as they're talking about abortion, I do think there is a part of the pro-life movement that talks about women like we don't understand what we're doing when we do that. And I think that maybe there's a little naivety when they look at women like that, like everyone is a 17-year-old girl who doesn't fully understand how this functions. And I think most women today, we do know. And there does need to be a certain movement towards talking honestly about women's understanding about the evil practice they're engaging in.
What I think is that
And again, she nailed it. She nailed it right. She nailed it right in the head. We need to stop pretending women are dumb. We need to stop pretending that women don't know what they're doing, that, they're just kind of confused or just in a haze and don't really understand what's going on. I would say 99.9% of women know what they're doing when they're going to get an abortion. I'll be shocked that any woman doesn't know exactly what's going on when she's going to get an abortion. She may be hurt, she may be upset, she may be, you know, in a terrible situation, but she knows what she's doing when she's going to the abortion clinic. This is something that I've never understood. I've heard the pro-life organizations say it. I've heard Ben Shapiro say it. Women don't know. They're confused. You know, they don't really understand what's all going on. They've been lied to by the culture. It's just a clump of cells. All of that. But we all know that's a lie. I mean, women are not dumb. They know that sex. If you get pregnant, they know what that pregnancy is. They know a child will come from that, which is the whole point of why they want to end it. They don't want to be attached to the guy that they were with, or they don't want to raise a child, or even like the Guttmacher Institute said, which is a pro-abortion organization. They said the number one reason why women get an abortion is because having an abortion would radically change their life, because that would mean you have to take care of a child, and obviously that radically changes anybody's life when you have a child. So they know the repercussions, they know the consequences of engaging in sex. So to pretend like women don't know what they're doing when it comes to abortion is, I think it's a foolish way of thinking. Like she said, it's naive to think that women are just confused and just we treat them like they have immature thinking, and they're just, like she said, a confused 17-year-old girl who doesn't really know what she's doing. They know what they're doing, and they need to be held to account, just like the men who engage with them need to be held to account for what they are doing or what they're allowing their spouse to do. Now, there are some men out there that you've heard where they know that they got their girlfriend pregnant, and unbeknown to them, they didn't know, which is a plausible thing, that their girlfriend or lover or whomever went and got an abortion without telling them. So, and those stories out there, if you look them up on the internet. Obviously, a man can have an abortion without his wife knowing, girlfriend knowing, because she's the one with the child. So it's more prevalent, obviously, that she would go do it without telling the boyfriend. So, or that's all it always would be. So when it comes to the issue, I think we should hold women accountable. Women are not dumb. They're also made in the image of God. They also have reason. They also understand. They understand human life and the dignity of human life and the value of human life. And so to pretend like they don't know what they're doing is just, it's a silly thought. Now, in regards to what she said about the women marching in Washington, D.C., I had to look that up to find out what was going on in regards to that. And it's pretty wild. They were literally walking down the street with drums, chanting, and I'll show it to you here in a second. Let me pull it up for you. So here are these women with their drums in Washington, D.C., walking down the street, trying to defend their supposed right to abortion. My daughter has less rights than her great-grandmother, which again, abortion was never a right. It was never the right of anybody to take the life of another human being inside the womb or out. You see the lady in this video, these two ladies, this lady here, she's not particularly young. This woman here, she looks younger, but again, not a child. They're not dumb. They know what they're marching for. They know what they want. Thousands of these ladies here. The drums. You see how it says the women also demonstrated their support for presidential candidate Harris, which again, that was the one thing. Like I said before, all of the word salads, all the confusion, all the mixed signals that she would send out about all these other different issues, when it came to abortion, she was 100% crystal clear. She wants abortion, no restrictions, no negotiation, full stop. That was Kamala Harris's position, and we're thankful that she lost the election. These are pro-life demonstrators that showed up trying to counter-protest her, which, you know, more power to them for being brave and going out there to counter-protest. And again, just look at the mix of the crowd. These are not children. There are some men in here too that are all for this wickedness. So to pretend, again, like they don't know what they're doing is a lie. These are grown people. They may be confused as far as like their worldview. They may be misunderstanding that they may be promoting what is darkness as light and you know, hating the light and not wanting it to be shown on them. But they know that they are taking the lives of children. Everybody knows where babies come from. All these people here, if you were to do a poll, 99% of them would say, yes, we know where babies come from. We know how babies are made. We know babies come out of women's womb. This is why they know it's a women's right, because only women can have babies, which is ironic because these same people would be for trans people. There was even a sign in the crowd, I think earlier, that says trans women are women, which is, again, confusing worldviews. But when it comes to abortion, they know what they're doing. And again, it's so funny to me when you see the signs like "my daughter's rights depend on this," or my great granddaughter, or my granddaughter doesn't have as much rights as my great grandmother, whatever. And you're like, it makes you wonder, like, do they not know that the women that they're so concerned with, they're killing them in their own bodies? Because not only boys are born into the world, obviously, women are born. Children, you know, females are born into the world, but they're perfectly okay killing the same women that they say they are defending. They're perfectly okay with killing them while saying we need to defend their right to kill their children. I mean, it's totally bonkers. But again, when you have a darkened mind, a darkened heart, where it's not awakened to the light of the gospel, or you suppress the truth for so long that you really can't think straight. This is the result of that. And so back to Megan Basham's point, we need to stop pretending like they don't know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They know that they're killing a human being within their bodies, and there's no excuse for it. So at the end of the day, most importantly, though, they need the gospel. They need to be saved. It's not about making pro-abortion people into pro-life people. At the end of the day, they need to believe rightly, and they need to have their sins forgiven. And that's the most hopeful thing about this whole issue. It's not even saving the children, which is obviously what we all want. But the most important thing is that the souls of these women who are engaged in these practices, the doctors who are gladly killing children in the womb, they have hope in Christ. If they repent of their sin, if they humble themselves before the mighty hand of God, God will forgive them, even of the sin of abortion, and he will completely wipe that away. And he'll say, you know what? You are welcome into my family. You are my daughter. You're my son. And I will look at you as I look at my own son in Christ Jesus. No more condemnation. You're free. And I'll love you for eternity. So that's it. And that's the hope of the gospel. And only the gospel can help these women.